Dr. Mark Loane is a prolific Australian whose legacy spans so many lives. Once a Wallabies captain, now an incredible surgeon, and also a member of the Order of Australia recipient. His legacy spans sport, medicine, and service, and we're so excited to have him on the podcast today. Dr. Mark Loane, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Now, I remember when I was here in the 90s at Nudgee College in 2000, I remember seeing your name up on the honour boards and thinking, who is this guy? He must be, what a champion, representing the Wallabies. So it's amazing to have you opposite me right now and being here on this podcast. I want to talk about your time playing for the Wallabies. I want to talk about your work as an ophthalmologist because you are one of those rare people who have had not one but two phenomenal careers in completely different fields. But let's go back to where it all started.
Yeah.
You were from regional Queensland growing up.
Yeah.
And I want to know, what was it like back then coming to Nudgee College?
I'll never forget, Dad was a magistrate. We moved all around the state. And at that stage, we were living in Roma. And I'll never forget coming to that rise about 2 kilometres down the road. And I could see this big white building. That's it. That's it. And I arrived it was the top of like the 25, 26 during that whole line. There was no one here. And so I was in this big, big place with no one. And I thought, this is dramatic. It doesn't look very, very good to me because I was alone. But people filed in and things started to pick up. And it was a big school, a big city, a big place. And that was a bit intimidating, I think, being from the country. But things turned around when the rugby season started, really. That's, when I started to embrace the place.
Did you, when you say you started to embrace the place with rugby, were you already playing rugby or was it a new sport?
I never played a game in my life of rugby. I never saw a game in my life.
Before you came to Nudgee, you never played rugby?
Never saw it, had never seen it. When I was in country Queensland, some guy in Serena said that you should be lock, because he said you can lock the scrum. And I thought, lock the scrum. I thought, that's interesting. So whenever people asked me what position I was in, I'd say lock. And so when I came to try out for the under-15, I had 3 years here, grade 10, 11 and 12. And I had a brother, Brosnan, who had a significant effect upon my life. He looked at me, he said, look, you're in the forwards. He said, what position do you play? I said, well, I don't know. I said, I play lock. He said, well, that's in the second row. I said, no, I'm in the pointy end. He said, the pointy end's number 8. That's what you are. And I thought, that's what I am, number 8. And he said, I'll give you half a game. We used to have trials against Churchy. And I said, do I have to wear the shoes? I had bare feet up to that stage. He said, number 8 in the shoes. And that was a dramatic thing, a turning point in my life, because I loved playing number 8 because you had both sides of the field to play, left and right. You had 7 people in front, 7 people behind. And that was a huge gift. You don't know when you're receiving a gift. It was a huge gift from Brother Brosnan. And he started teaching me how to play rugby in that grade 10 year. And I was always grateful that he did what he did. Thankful to this day.
What are your memories from playing in the GPS competition, travelling around amongst the GPS schools?
Well, I thought when they'd put you in this bus, and I was used to a very limited type of experience in country Queensland, but you get into this bus and with your friends and your mates, and they'd send you up to Toowoomba Grammar, and then you'd get back in the bus, come back here, they'd probably give you a burger on the way back, and you go to this third-rate movie.
Yep.
And
in the dormitories?
In the dormitory.
Yep. And
I thought, this is pretty good. I've been on the bus trip. I've seen something different. I come back here, had a burger. Now I'm on top of watching, a movie. And then it happened again and again. Like you go down to the Southport School. You go out to Ipswich Grammar. You go out to those beautiful grounds at Churchy. So when you're in the country schools in Queensland, there might be 1 or 2 schools. But here we had 9 schools. And I thought that it was just a magnificent display. I mean, every place seemed to be a little bit different, but a little bit the same. And that's probably, most of my friends are from those days and those schools to this day.
Amazing. We're going to talk about your career in more detail, but I get the feeling that you were quite an ambitious student or an ambitious kid? Is that something that naturally was burning inside of you?
That was the heart of things. When I was a child in Cooktown, Dad used to move around, and in front of the courthouse was this Captain Cook Memorial, and he spent about 6 weeks there. And I thought, who is this Captain Cook character? I mean, he was getting around. I was 8 years of age. I thought, I'd like to get around, see more than what I can see. And so that's been a long journey of mine, seeing where Cook went, seeing where he was killed, in fact, in Hawaii. So that was, I wanted a bigger life, and I didn't know how to get it. I was up there in Cooktown. I thought, well, this Captain Cook character, he's had a bigger life. I wouldn't mind something like that. So I didn't know how to do it, but I knew what I wanted.
That's amazing. And it's interesting, these little gifts that come along the way.
Yeah.
Brother Bronson says, no, you're not Locke. You're at the pointy end. You're number 8. You take that leap of faith. You play.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that your path from there, playing number 8 for Nudgee, accelerated very quickly in terms of modern timing into what it was to become eventually a Wallaby.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
That happened very, very quickly. I played the under 15, and by the time I finished playing under 15, I was the captain under 16. And then the next year was the premiership year, 1971. I played under 19 when I could have played under 18 in my first year at university, and we beat New South Wales then. And then the following year, most of my under 19 team didn't turn up for the trials, and so I didn't know what to do. And I was walking down to the second oval at the University of Queensland, and a guy called Jules Grasimov came up to me and said, I think you can play open. And I said, are you sure? He said, yeah.
Open division.
Yeah, straight into open.
Yep.
From under 19, when I could have played under 18, straight into the open. And I had about 3 or 4 games, and someone came up to me and said, congratulations on being in the possibles versus probables. And I said, am I a possible? They said, no, you're a probable. And so it all looked pretty easy to me. And then I played for Australia against Tonga, and then I was dropped, which was a great lesson to me. So that would have been after 5 years of rugby, really. But
that's amazing. Within 5 years of rugby, you're playing for your country.
Yeah.
And you went on to play 28 times for Australia, 6 times as captain.
Yeah.
You're regularly listed as one of the greatest Wallabies of all time, then that number 8 position.
Yeah.
But going back, you said something really interesting is you got dropped, and I don't think a lot of people necessarily know that. But what did you do at the time to get that jersey back? And what feelings do you remember having?
I thought that things looked pretty easy because it keeps on coming to you. But I used to be a fanatical student. I like studying, and it's a peculiar thing. It sometimes go against you in life, and when you look back, it was a huge advantage. I've only failed one exam in my time, and that was my second year medical school, where it might have been playing too much rugby and being too much of a student. But if I hadn't have been dropped from that team, I wouldn't have, nailed the supplementary exam. I had anatomy, which is the only exam I failed in life, and I was so affronted by one failure academically that it annoyed me, and it's never happened again in life. So it was a significant advantage, and it was a turning point in my life. I mean, I came back and I embraced the rugby in a much more mature capability, and I learnt how to study at university and fit in the rugby. I went to my dean, a guy called Eric Saint, and I said, look, because a lot of people didn't want me to continue playing the rugby. And he said,
why is that?
Because I couldn't
you to focus
do
on
both.
your studies?
Yes, exactly right.
Okay.
They thought I couldn't do both.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Yeah, and I went to him and thinking that he would say, no, you have to give it up. And he said to me, I think you should play your rugby. He said, I think it'll change your life. I think it'll give you a bigger life. And he said, the deal is that if you keep passing your exams, I'll back you. The day you fail an exam, the backing is gone.
It stops.
So what I learned was that I got them to the past papers, started passing the exams easily, in an authoritative fashion, and I tried to do both. Given the choice between rugby and academics, I thought, given the choice, why not do both?
Yeah.
And it stuck to me. I mean, and that's because of Professor Eric Saint and his having some trust in me. And lots of my medical life is some form of, thanks to the faith he showed in me.
And also touches on something you mentioned before, which is ambition.
Yes.
You've got to be ambitious.
Yes.
You've got to work hard to do those. You've got to want it. And it sounds to me like you wanted it at that young age.
And that's something I found here.
At Nudgee?
At Nudgee. That's what I had. It stands out crystal clear in my mind. There was a turning point in my life that it had this variety of things that you could do and stimulate yourself with. But I was surrounded by young men who were, in the first time in my life, in a group. They were ambitious. And I thought, for the first time, being ambitious wasn't some form of defect.
Yeah.
And I had a close friend of mine, James McEwen, close to this day, and he said to me, his father was a doctor and he intended to do medicine, and I'm sure that's where I got the idea to do medicine. That's where it came from. So I was surrounded by people who were naturally ambitious, and the school reflected ambition. They liked winning. They liked winning at all sorts of things, winning academically, winning on the sports fields, and I thought, this is nice. This is a place to be.
I love that. And it doesn't matter whether you're a boy or a girl, the idea of being ambitious and wanting great things is okay. Because I think it's almost frowned upon sometimes.
Yes.
Like, no,
Yeah.
you'll be right, sit back with the pack.
Yeah.
But if you do have that burn or desire
Yeah.
and you want to achieve great things in this country or wherever it might be in the world, I think that's a really healthy thing to have. And it's something that should be amplified, not put out, if you know what I mean.
The ambition there intellectually, and
Yep.
I had the ambition physically,
Yep.
to both. And both of those were essentially gifts from Nudgee.
That's amazing. We could talk all day about rugby, but
Yeah.
I do want to ask one more question. You captained the Australian side in 1979.
Yeah.
It was the first Bledisloe Cup win since 1949. What do you remember of that moment? And let's be honest, not a lot of people listening to this podcast will remember when the Wallabies last won the Bledisloe Cup. But you were there at a really amazing point in history. What are your memories from that time?
I remember David Brockhoff, our coach, that he said to us just before we ran out, he said, they put up the Bledisloe Cup. And we said to David Brockhoff, we said, well, what's that? And he said, well, no one had seen it for 45 years, but he knew that it had existed. So we had been teaching ourselves rugby by going and playing provincially. Bob Templeton, my great coach, always said that you had to go to New Zealand to be taught how to play rugby. And a guy called Grizz Wiley, in particular, who just recently died from Canterbury. When you look at the great rugby sides of the world, I mean, you'd be looking at Auckland, you'd be looking at Canterbury, and then the great provincial sides, Northern Transvaal and South Africa. So we needed to go there, and we started to learn, how to play the game, and particularly a thing called advantage line play. You needed to get the team to the advantage line. You needed to drive people back. And that particular day, and particularly in the first 40, 50 minutes, we drove that all black pack backwards. And I think it was 12-6 or 12-9. So territorially, we were superior, probably for the first time for decades against New Zealand. And New Zealand's good at that. Bob Templeton used to always say it's a bad team that loses by 1 point and a great team that wins by 1 point. And we won a tough, hard game, 12-6. They're the type of games that New Zealand win by 1 point or 3 points or whatever. So we grounded out and stuck to our tasks for that full 80 minutes or 20, 100 minutes, whatever it was. That was a high point. I think the premiership here in 1971 was a high point against State High, winning that on the bell.
You did? 1971 on the bell.
On the bell. Yeah. Chris Cutler, one of the flankers, scored under the black dot. And later on, I had a patient of mine.
Speaking of gifts, what a gift.
That's exactly right. There's a guy called Jim Lucy who coached State High, ended up being a patient of mine, and we still talk about that, about how that event occurred. And he's got a photographic memory of it, and so have I. It's a lovely thing. So there were these highlights in that rugby career, but also inevitably those days Australia didn't have consistency. It was only afterwards, after I retired, we took them from the terrible loss against Tonga, which I played a part in. Over a period of 10 years, we came to a stage where Australia was winning at home and occasionally winning overseas. And then in 1984 with Andrew Slack, they started winning away.
Yep.
So I looked at our time as rugby players for Australia as being a transitional thing, bringing back the knowledge, bringing back the wherewithal.
Yep.
But we didn't quite get there, although we enjoyed it an immense amount, of course.
It's interesting when you were telling the story about, winning on Ross Oval against State High in 1971.
Yep, absolutely.
My mind went back to, my memory is the year 2000. We also were undefeated premiers, our first 15, and we held up Churchy against our line, and they were just hitting us again and again and again. And that final buzzer went off and we won the game, and that's really what won us the premiership. But it's interesting, despite the fact that there's, 29 years difference, there's such connection in terms of stories and feelings and emotions from being a student at Nudgee. What do you think the college as an institution represents today? And do you think that's changed over the last 130 plus years?
Well, you and I were talking previously about this to some small extent. I think it's an extraordinary thing that it was here in the top of 1800s. And then it's here in the 1900s and the 20s and the 21s. And so I think it has to be twofold. Number one, you need to actually teach young men how to live their lives. And that probably hasn't changed over 1,000 years. And you need some consistency in that. And then you also need to prepare them for the world ahead. And there's the 4 industrial revolutions, 1770, 1780 approximately, steam and coal and whatever. And the second industrial revolution, 1880, electricity in particular, then 1980 with the computers and this microchip. And now we're entering into another industrial revolution, AI, which has come around. So how is it that you can teach people how to live and how to conduct their life and how to be, live their life, the nice things, respect, love, care, compassion, all those things, but at the same time be trained well enough to embrace that other part of the future, the industrial revolutions. And I think when I was here, I was being taught to both, that you could, how to live your life, but how to also adapt to the life is ahead in a secular sense.
Yep.
And I think, here we are, 1800s, 1900s, 20s, 21s. I mean, it's an extraordinary thing that college is still doing that, has some mechanism, sport being a big part of that, I think, of how to prepare a young person, a young man for the life ahead, but also to prepare them in an academic sense to have the capacity to change, because the change is an enormous thing. It's a wonderful thing, I think. I received that from this school, both things, how to live life and live it well, but also how to, be able to change for the future that comes to you in a secular sense.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think that's still here.
I do too. I agree. And just to think of all the men and women whose lives have been changed through this community over the last 135 years, as much as the world is changing, and it's changing right now, as you mentioned with AI.
Yeah.
Yet still, the bricks and mortar here, the foundation remains.
Yeah.
And there still is a new crop of men coming through every year, getting an education and getting the chance to be ambitious.
It's
in a different world.
Constant purpose. And those two things, I think, were certainly here when I arrived, and they're still here. And they go on, because our lives are transitory, might be 70, might be 80, might be 90, but the school has lived a long time and will outlive us.
Let's talk about your work as an ophthalmologist.
Yeah.
You've been awarded a member of the Order of Australia for your service to medicine in the field of ophthalmology.
Yeah.
What drives you? Where do you get that ambition or that passion to serve in this field? What is it? You're still doing it today. What drives you to continue your work?
I think the way I was reared, my father believed in justice. He was a magistrate and whatever. So I think most of that comes from my family. I think then broadened and emphasised at Nudgee.
But when you say justice, do you mean the justice that people with eye diseases in Indigenous regions like you work with deserve some sort of deserve support?
Yeah, I think some form of compassion. I mean, I think you try to make the world a better place. I mean, my father fought for the country. My grandfather fought for the country. We didn't do that, but you try to make some contribution to the country. It's not much use having children and having families unless you're trying to make the world a better place for those people to come into the world you have created as a generation, so that they themselves can access things to allow them to survive and do well. So I think it's something I imbibed. I don't know where in particular, but looking back at my parents and looking back at the school, I think that subtle thing, it has entered my soul or my character.
And do you think that's sort of also driven you for the work that you've done in Indigenous communities?
I wouldn't have any doubt about that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a complicated thing, but there's no doubt about that. I mean, it's still that ethic is still here, I understand. That is not just enough to do academics, not enough to be a sports person. There's got to be another side to your character, and that's what is part of, the whole process of trying to become a complete person.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I
that's
agree.
a crucial thing.
Now, we've talked about ambition. We've talked
Yes.
about the impact of this institution, Nudgee. On a personal level, I'm curious to ask, how have you changed in different stages of your life? What's the Mark Loane
That's
like
nice.
today?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I enjoy that changing. I enjoy the. I think every 10 years you're quite a different person. So it's and I'm now 70, 71. And I'm still working. I just came here tonight from operating, and it still feels good. I feel confident that looking back at all of those things, it's not necessarily in some form of acquisitive structure or, whatever. But I think I've been fairly true. I've tried to be true to the way I was parented, the way I learned how to live a life here. I think I feel confident that I've tried to live to it.
That's amazing.
And it evolves because we evolve throughout life,
Yeah.
throughout parenting, throughout being a type of 19, 20-year-old, and you get older and you mentor people. So it's an ongoing process. I mean, it doesn't stop, does it?
No. I mean, I'm early 40s. I remember what I wanted in my 20s. I didn't know what I wanted in my 20s. 30s, you think you're learning.
Yeah.
And it does change, I find. It's interesting you say every 10 years you find change. I remember when I finished Nudgee, I wasn't as fortunate as you. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And I went and lived overseas in London for a year and explored the world, right?
Yeah.
But that's not for everyone. But it does lead into where I wanted to ask you another question regarding if students at the school are listening to this, and they've seen your name up on the honour boards as well. It might be a little dusty, but they can see it there, right? And if they're looking for passion or to find their passion in life, and they are, in their teens here at the college, what sort of advice would you give them if they weren't sure what they wanted to do yet?
I think that's a good thing. I really believe that you probably find yourself as a male around about 25 years of age.
Interesting.
I think you start to become who you really are about 25. And I think that from, say, when you leave school, say 17 to 25, that 7 or 8 years, I think you should look after yourselves, look after each other, because it can be a difficult time in all sorts of ways. Young men do a lot of silly things. I think it's a peculiar thing, but if you ring up, say, a car insurance company, ring up RACQ and ask them when males start, paying the same price as everyone else as an adult, it's around about 25. So I think there's that period of time for young males from 18 to 25, which is a bit dangerous. And I think they can wait. I think they can put some runs on the board, learn how to do things, but don't get frustrated until it starts to come at 25. I do have a thing about the 25, and I've spoken to psychiatrists and psychologists about this, and I think it is just a nice time. I see it all the time, young men, young people. It's around about that time. So I don't think there's any huge rush.
Great advice. Now, we get inundated with so many messages of old boys listening to this podcast and students. But I'm curious to know, what's your relationship like with fellow students from your time at the school? Do you still keep in touch with mates from the school? Do you connect with each other now and again? Is there one or two that you're close with? What's your relationship like with your mates?
Not as much as it should be. Mm-hmm. We get together every now and then, particularly the first 15, led by Dennis Greathead. So we do get together. You find them in different places throughout the state and throughout the country. So it's an ever-present type of thing. Not only those friends from here, but the friends from other schools.
Yeah, that's interesting
the
too.
Other GPS schools in particular. My oldest friends from other schools that I met playing cricket and playing rugby, in those times. Still,
that's amazing.
To this day.
We were talking offline before this that you did play the first 15 cricket as well at Nudgee.
Yes.
Mark was very upfront that it was questionable as to whether or not you should have been in the team. You probably were tall and coordinated, but if you're watching a video, you can see this. But for those that are listening, we've actually got this,
my God.
which is here in the studio. And
is that where
I actually said, what is this? It's Sports Star of the Year, 1976, Mark Loane.
That was the premier top of sports award in the state. It was run by the Telegraph, and it was some type of voting structure. And it used to be handed out by the premier of the state.
Wow. Who
was Joe Bajoki at that time. So I think a handful of people received it, and it was a big voting structure. And I remember going up to receive this, and Joe Bajoki said to me, "Are you Ted Loane's son?" He knew everything.
Oh, really?
Joe, yeah.
If you're listening, it kind of looks like an Oscar meets like Rocky Balboa
on
an
big
old
dinner.
sort of...
It faded into nothing, that dinner.
Oh, really?
Yeah, But there are other significant dinners, of course.
One of the great things about this podcast series, this go around, is we have Nudgee students who are invited to ask questions of their heroes.
Really?
And we've got some questions from some current students that they want to ask you. I'm going to hear this one for the first time.
Okay,
so we're going to, on the screen, we're going to have some Nudgee students pop up. Here we go.
Interesting. Hi.
G'day, Dr. Mark Loane. My name's Cooper and I'm a Year 12 student at Nudgee. Looking back at your school days, what was something you didn't realise then that you realised was crucial later in life?
Look at all those badges on his...
You've got a lot of badges there.
A lot of badges there.
So it was crucial later in life. I think the strange thing about all the sport and the cooperation, being in top of debating clubs, playing music and whatever, is that not much is achieved unless you're in a group structure and you need people around you to achieve things. I don't think that was immediately apparent to me. I was, of course, of the feelings that, it was me. But certainly I think the significant things were that most things of any consequence are achieved by group action. Mm-hmm. There was lots of training for that, tennis, rugby, debating, music, whatever. So I think that's something I wasn't immediately apparent to me, because when you're youthful, you're pretty self-dominated. So that's a natural thing. That's the way the game is, and that's the way it probably should be.
Yeah.
But I think you don't realise that there's nothing of any consequence that you can achieve in this life without some team structure and relying upon other people.
I love that. And so many people who have succeeded do surround themselves with great people. Yeah. And I even think of my own career selfishly, but for yourself, a rugby player needs a team. An ophthalmologist can't do the surgery probably on their own. You have people supporting you.
Yeah.
To the very core root of having a great family and friends around you is critical in order to thrive.
And the other small thing, I suppose, we've probably mentioned it already, is that life is a series of gifts. And you get given things. I mean, you're born with some intelligence which is enough to pass exams, but you wouldn't have had that unless you had the neuronal architecture developing in the last third of pregnancy in the first 4 years of life. So you can't be too conceited about what intelligence you have, because that is a gift. Sporting ability is a gift. Nearly all the things that are worthwhile in this life are given to you as a gift, I think. I didn't realise that.
And we do have a second question.
Hello, Dr. Loane. My name's Max Malloy and I'm a Year 11 student at Nudgee. My dad's an old boy. How close has that community been to you throughout life?
It's been an ever-present thing, and it turns up in extraordinary places. I can remember, flying into places like Bledisloe, and finding a Nudgee old boy there. I'd played rugby with them, whatever. So it turns up in peculiar places, but it's an ongoing project. It hasn't finished yet, and we do get together, particularly the old First 15 from 1971. But I don't know what the words would be for it, but it's an ongoing project. It has never finished and never will finish because it changes as we all change as we get older through the decades. And it's just such a pleasure to be here tonight to have the feelings, to see this house on the hill, to see this place academically aligned here with this extraordinary number of sporting things still around out there, the swimming, the rugby, the athleticism, the cricket. I mean, another tale we'll explore sometime, a thing called muscular Christianity, where the sport allows you, the discipline, to become who you are and what you are in an academic sense.
Absolutely. And I do find it amazing, riffing on what the student just asked, is you can go anywhere in Australia, anywhere in Queensland, just about anywhere around the world, and there's a good chance you'll find a connection back to Nudgee College, which is phenomenal. And I think enviable for a lot of people that weren't so fortunate to go to a school or an institution like this one.
You certainly find the Nudgee people in very, very strange places, but you wouldn't have expected to find them there. So it never quite leaves.
One last question, we're asking this of everyone who joins the podcast on this season, is what's that one piece of advice that you give anyone listening if they want to achieve their goals?
Persistence. Persist. I mean, there was the leader of the Dutch resistance when they were fighting the Spanish in the War of the Spanish Succession. The Spanish said, why don't you give up? Because we're the most powerful nation on earth. And the leader of the Dutch resistance said, you don't have to have victory to persist, and we will persist. And I think that the thing that I admire in life and I admire about people is that they will persist, and persist just for the sake of persisting. And I really like that. And I've tried to live my life like that. Persist just because you want to persist.
I love that. Well, what a great note to finish on. Mark, it's a pleasure to have you go from a name that was up on an honour board for me as a teenage boy to now sitting across having a conversation about life. And I feel like I could sit down and we could talk for hours about lots of different topics. It's an amazing career. You're someone who's so represents this school in a wonderful way. And thank you so much for being part of this small chat and being part of our podcast.
I hope I was articulate enough. It's a pleasure to be back here. It really is a true pleasure. It has given me so much and keeps on giving. So thanks very much for the opportunity.
Thanks, sir.
What a privilege to sit down with such an accomplished, intelligent and articulate man. From the roars of the rugby field to the focus of the operating theatre, Dr. Mark Loane has certainly inspired many generations of Nudgee students. Well, if you want more inspiring stories from our Nudgee community, up next, I will sit down with Christine Atchison, Nudgee's sports injury coordinator, past mother, and a woman who always goes the extra mile. We spoke with Alex Clark.
It was our day from hell. It was the worst day I've had here, to be honest. And I was heading in that direction with the buggy, and there was already 3 responders there. And there was also the referee from a game on the next field who happened by chance, to my absolute luck. He was a Prince Charles emergency doctor.
Wow.
So he had it all under control.
If you loved this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your mates. Unscripted, my Nudgee hero. It's all about us, past, present, and future.